he gets an exception.
Fine, I call third. Fine, I call third next time.
No, only he gets the
No,
exception.
I actually get an exception.
He's never been allowed to. He's never been.
I'm just a little guy.
Alex, seriously.
I really hope you're
not severely overpowered at this game.
I'm just a little guy. I show. Wait, here you
You're a little guy.
Where's your guy?
Where's my? Okay.
Okay, I call third.
No, you took the hat. You took the crown.
Oh, you're going jiggly.
Oh no, I'm Kirby.
Dude,
with,
I can hear it over here.
I'm Kirby with facial features.
That is my name right now.
Where are you, Jiggly?
There we go.
Yeah, that's good. That's good stuff.
Oh no, he's Vandal. Wait, no, that's not a problem.
Bryce, I even added y'all. Bryce, I even added y'all on our week. I added y'all.
Okay, whatever.
Since I can move.
The meme brawlers are severely overpowered.
This is not.
Okay, let's do some squats. Squats.
Yeah, get out of here, little boy. Hey, you want to fight me?
Oh, yeah.
1v1, right now. 1v1. I'm a princess. I'm good at stuff. No! Hey, watch that. Watch that. Get over there. You should be ashamed of yourself. Get over there. Get over there. When you're on you again, you'll make me fall. Yeah. I wonder what Jiggly thought he was like. Oh, I got you this. What? Can you like say something like that? Oh, when you eat Jigglypuff? Oh, you just get hair. Like you get hair. I just want to be.
Oh, hello.
No, you don't get. I did like a cute hair.
Say you pass me. Hello. Ow. I'll play. I'll play. I'm not able to do it.
Okay.
Oh, hello. Oh.
Oh my god. You know what happened the last time you did that?
No, my family has been so messy. You good. Yay! No, those are kind of small. Like a little. So you were the little regalia. You would see his palms of snow. Wait. No. Ah, good one. He goes, no. Losing your voice. I know, right?
It's not big at all.
Yeah. How could you do this? You missed.
Oh my god. Kirby has like a bed. Nap time. Stop it. It's not nap time. Okay. Start now and everything.
Macaroni and cheese!
Nap time. No, don't get me. I'm making a nap.
You make it.
That is the one team that still lives.
Okay, right.
Everyone's eyes. When I made it swing.
I know, I hate what Logan does all the time. It's like, please. Oh my goodness. Oh. No. Yes, because it was going to hit back. It was going to hit. And then I hit it.
Yeah, I know. Don't mind me, it's not thrown out of nowhere.
Yeah. Yes. So loud. It's so annoying. Oh, I'm still on my arm. Oh, I have a seat. This is what happens when you play the game.
You guys
Set me
are
up so perfect. Like that, Caleb? You out? Wait, is it my shot? No, it's yours.
Very nice.
See.
Yeah, Lexi actually surprised me with her aptitude. Trying to get the sound system. Yes, I hit that. Always a viable.
I'm 100% sure. What up? I'm 199% sure. Yay! No matter what, no matter what. Bye, have fun.
You're not alive.
I thought we were friends.
So they said not alive.
You guys seen over the head?
Did you ever
Yes.
realize that whenever the enemy doing that, someone randomly dies?
Here,
That's not real.
here, and here.
Oh my
Here.
goodness. Why can't I hit it? I know, right?
Yes, it is. You guys know what playing? Any ball. Any ball is a letter. Don't get a ball off the table. You get a letter. Like that's the rule.
I called
Can't believe you guys
At least it wasn't.
playing fast and loose.
Hey,
At least it wasn't
I'm
that.
sorry for the first time I watched
I
the
would
anime. And I
Hey!
Have you been up to the deal yet? No, we need to be on because I'm taking it over. I'll be on.
Why? We shot. Why? Don't like him. Don't like them. Oh my goodness gracious. Oh my goodness gracious. No. You need your timing to be just a second perfect. I just yes.
Hey, don't be that way. Don't be that way. Don't be that way. You can be that one. Yeah, you can be that one. What happened? I know. Don't hit me.
Oh, wait. Watch the trick. Just do it. Play basketball.
At least you get it all out.
I know. Wait. It's the on. That's what's wrong. It's the on. It's the on spot. It's the on. It's the on. That's what's screwing me up. Here, I'm confusing myself. Never mind. You're gonna stay down there. Grab it. Time it. Yeah, time it.
Unknown friend, 0. For good reason. Also known as. Oh God, get that thing away from me.
Yo, Al? I confused myself. It's 2 letters because and another one for hitting my arm. Unless it's like
No, you can't get 2 letters in the same thing. You only get 1 letter. That's a really interesting question.
Do not mess with
What happens if it,
So typically you can't get 2 letters in the same thing.
Mr. English.
Maybe. You must. 9. Time it. No, you should time it. I was like, what do you have here? I'm pretty sure it's
They nerfed this for us.
you know,
You know what Joker is?
Sound like that.
He stole Waluigi's invitation.
Yeah.
They specifically said, we're gonna steal a Smash Brothers card. Waluigi is the only one who did it.
My goodness.
Mario won. And yet, Joker comes out and specifically says, we're gonna steal the Smash Brothers card. Or the N-word pass. The most powerful thing in the universe.
Call the order, kill. Call the order.
Okay, let's see.
Okay, call the order really quickly. Hello. How are you? Your daughter, you want to kill you? Yeah.
So it's this one.
I'm not having time of
Life should be to win, like it always is for me. So I'm not. Okay. You just have to hit the ball. Okay. I'm so back to my recall. I set you up so bad. still got it.
He's a pacifist.
Oh my god!
Wait. That ball.
Yeah, you gotta let it.
Wait, who
You have to learn to allow people. They won't get out of your way.
Unless, of course, I push ball.
I know. You just have to run into them. Well,
It wasn't me.
that wasn't me.
I actually show it. That's all that matters.
I want to keep on going like this.
Hey.
Go like this.
That's my C. I gotta be you.
I think it's right here.
Sit in the middle of the table. And would have to shoot around you.
Oh wait, that's
Depressing. Iffy.
oh no!
Yes!
No way!
No!
Yes!
Sonia.
Wait, would that affect me since that was great?
No.
Oh! Okay. I feel happy.
Oh no, he has
Great.
Okay. I can do it.
Is Jamie still here? Has he moved yet?
No.
I do one.
I think they had to delay because of the snow there. Oh.
His grandmother said tomorrow. There's
Oh,
also,
they
but
wanted to-
that's not 100%.
I was just up there and it was very snowy.
You're like,
He turned on someone else's phone.
Those tiny legs.
In my mouth.
Oh,
Okay.
There's both of us.
I know.
Yay.
This is my name. This is my name.
This is you.
Maybe.
I can be and then transfer it to which is
Sure.
which is that one?
It's like skateboards, it's like,
A lot more easy.
I don't trust the walls.
They're like wobbly on each other.
I can bring that back.
It's like
Yes.
fall up a little this way. That's an intro for a song, but you know that song? That's what's me.
Finally.
Finally.
Right now it's
What do you have to?
oh yeah.
No.
Did
Yes, that game.
Do it, game. Do it, Steve.
I remember that game.
Yes. I get it.
And me also remember that game.
That's funny. I mean, I do.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, whenever Daniel says go, then we go.
We good?
Yeah, we're good. All right, everybody find a chair to sit in and sit in. I love his calling voice. You need to get like a little more like, ah!
I need a chair.
I drove home yesterday, like 9-hour drive, and so I don't drink enough water.
Oh,
Why does it seem like
I know exactly about
Woke
that.
up dehydrated.
Winter's so hard to stay hydrated because you don't realize how much you lose. Summertime,
Not much to give.
yeah. Summertime you stay so hydrated.
All right, I'm ready.
Bonnie, wasn't there a Bible in the chair?
Yeah. Where'd you put it?
Oh, no, I didn't see one on here when I put mine on. Okay.
There's a Bible underneath the chair.
Well, I just put that there.
I have more big ones than you.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
I didn't do that.
Huh? We didn't get it.
All right, let's get started. Would
Someone turn the lights? Thanks, Ed.
anybody like to open us in prayer, or do I have to volunteer someone?
You can go on yourself.
I do it every time.
Yeah, that's how it works.
Tradition. Is that what church is to you, Nick?
All it is tradition.
Yep.
Well, then you get to pray.
That's not a tradition.
Exactly.
You know it's
Go
not a
ahead.
tradition.
You're gonna pray today.
Alright. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for today and a chance we've gotten to come and worship you here and just get to learn more about you and get to know you more. And I pray that the service goes well as well as the
Amen. Thank you. All right, let's stand for the song. Please. Who breaks the power? Who breaks the power of sin and darkness? Whose love is mighty and so much stronger than the glory, the kingdom of all who shakes the whole earth with holy thunder and leaves us breathless in awe and wonder. The King of glory, the kingdom of all. This is amazing grace. This is unfailing love. That you would take my place. That you would bear my cross. You lay down your life. That I would be set free. Oh, Jesus, I sing for all that you've done for me. Who brings the chaos? Who brings that chaos back into order? Who makes the orphan a son and daughter? The King of glory, the King of glory, rules in nations with truth and justice, shine like the sun in all of his brilliance. The King of glory, the King above all. This is amazing grace. This is unveiling love. That you would take my place. That Then you would bear my cross. You laid down your life, that I would be set free. Oh, Jesus, I sing for all that you've done for me. Worthy is the Lamb, worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy is the King who conquered the grave. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy is the King who conquered the grave. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy is the King who conquered the grave. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy, worthy, worthy. Yeah, this is amazing grace. This is unfailing love. That you would take my place. That you would bear my cross. You laid down your life, that I would be set free. Oh, Jesus, I sing for all that you've done for me. Oh, Jesus, I sing for all that you've done for me. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious is that grace so near, the hour and first believed. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. 'Tis grace that brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've known this days to sing God's praise. Then when we first begun, amazing grace, how sweet the sound. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Was blind, but now I see. You all can be seated if you wish. our power in the moonlit night, where planets are in motion and galaxies are bright. We are amazed in the light of the stars. It's all proclaiming who you are. You're beautiful. Oh, yeah. You're beautiful. I see you there hanging on the tree. You bled and then you died and then you rose again for me. Now you are sitting on your heavenly throne, and soon you will be coming home. You're beautiful. You're we ride, when we arrive at eternity's shore, when it's just a memory and fear gone no more, we'll enter in as the wedding bells ring. Your bride will come together and we'll sing. You're beautiful. You're Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for your grace and goodness, for all the wonders that you're doing in our lives. Thank you for this time of fellowship, and I pray that you bless this day, worship and learning about you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Isaac. Thank you, Sonia.
You're welcome.
All right, guys. If you don't have a Bible, notice what everyone's doing. Go get one off that shelf. Once you have the Bible, open it up to the book of Mark, chapter 10. Page 869.
Come on, man. We're trying to help you. Mark 10 is 8:39.
Mark chapter 10, page 869.
It's 8:39.
Oh, 39, my bad. 839. I almost got it right first service. I said like 837, 838.
Wait, where are we?
Yeah. Mark chapter 10. I was shouting the wrong page number. My apologies. 839. 839. Mark chapter 10. We have quite a few new faces today. I am going to have the darndest time getting all these names in my head. Oh, good. If you're not new and I forgot your name, I'm doubly sorry.
It's okay. I forgive you.
Alright. Raise your hand if it's your first time here. Okay, second time here? Anyone? Did you almost raise your hand? How many years have you been here?
74.
Anybody third time here? You can't have it be both. The joke doesn't work. No. Nope. Nope. That's not how numbers work. Alright, guys. So we're in the middle of Mark for you guys who haven't been here, following along with us. We're in Mark chapter 10. The first 9 chapters, Jesus has been doing a ministry of teaching and healing all over the northern part of Israel. Now, Israel back then was very much like California is today. There's a lot of small towns and mountains and lakes up in the north, and there's a lot of the bigger cities down in the south. And since he's been mostly up in the north for the first part of his ministry, he's mostly been around small towns around this one big lake they had. Now we're finally transitioning down into the bigger cities, but he's doing it very cleverly. He's kind of being sneaky about it. Much like California, if you were to go down south, you'd find big cities. But if you stayed far enough inland, if you stayed far enough to the east, you wouldn't hit the big cities. Anyone know if like you travel the east side of California, what do you run into?
Just like desert areas kind of.
Thanks for all shouting out the answer when I pointed at him. That was good. Good. Now he knows how it works up here. Now he gets it. He knows how it works. You gotta bite out those answers fast, or else the hawks will descend upon you. What were you gonna say?
Like west side, it's like LA, San Diego.
Yeah, and then like what's on the east side? Like nothing. It's like nothing. Yeah,
The valley.
the valley. So there's like farms, and then you keep going east, and you get desert. But there's not a lot of big, and so that's actually what Jesus does. We're gonna see some place names here that I know you guys might not be familiar with, but just get this picture in your head. He went off to the east side of Israel, inland, away from the sea, away from the cities, and now he goes down south, past all the big cities, but he's so far inland, there's still small ones. Okay, and then when he's done there, he's gonna loop up, and it'll come up from south of the big cities. Does that make sense? Kind of like a big J, looping back up into Judea. So we start out chapter 10, right over here, verse 1, please.
Wow, you always start on this side.
I do.
I wonder.
Someday you'll learn.
That side.
Someday.
Would that mean that you won't?
No,
we
you right, left,
There's only one way to find out.
Yeah, we tried that one time. We just
It's my
missed
fault.
it. Yeah.
I wasn't asking you which left it was for you.
Left. That's right. And
Does it
so
matter?
left and right.
Yes.
Directions. And we can, and we can go north.
It doesn't
We're
work.
not driving the car.
No, that's
It's
why
not
I'm telling
important.
you he goes this way. That's why I'm telling everybody.
Oh.
Oh, yes.
Anyways, read us chapter 10, verse 1. The rest of you read with your eyeballs and not with your lips.
Then Jesus left Capernaum and went down to the region of
Judea.
And into the area east of the Jordan River. Once again, crowds gathered around him, as unusual.
Nope. Try
As
that again.
usual, he was teaching them.
Thank you.
Some-
Verse 2 to
Some Pharisees came and tried to trap him with a question. Should a man be allowed to divorce his wife?
Okay, pause. I know we're only 2 verses in, but I gotta ask.
Where are we?
Oh, good question.
Mark 10.
Chapter 10.
Oh, you said 36.
I said all kinds of things.
There was many numbers.
Not really your fault. My apologies. I said the wrong page number. Then I said what I guessed last service. That was the only time I said 836. I said last service I almost got it. I said 836. And that was the only one you heard.
Oh. Okay.
Sorry. It was a good try. It was a good try. You were trying to listen. It's kind of my fault for shouting out wrong things. So the question I have for you guys is, why is their question a trap at all? Why is the question, should a man be allowed to divorce his wife? Why is that question a trap? Does that make sense? Because that was their intent. These Pharisees, these smart guys are going to try and trap Jesus. Why is that a trap?
Because it says in like the 10 Commandments or it
Oh,
says
wait. Are you reading ahead?
a little bit.
Okay, a little bit. All right, we'll get there. We'll get there. You can try and give your answer without quoting if you want.
It says that like a guy can divorce his wife.
Okay, so it says elsewhere in the Bible already. It already has a rule on this. Now, would that make it a trap, though? Wouldn't that just mean there's a right answer?
Yes, because it's like he can, but it's not the right thing to do.
Ooh, interesting. Okay, anyone else? Why is this a trap? Yeah.
Because it's hard to talk about divorces.
That is 100% true. It's hard to talk about divorce. In any given room you care to walk into, the odds are now strongly in favor of someone in that room has been hit by divorce. Not that they've been divorced, but they've been affected by divorce. I mean, with this many junior hires in the room, I don't think it's possible that there isn't a divorce-affected person in the room. I don't think that's possible. Does that make sense? Like, divorce is that common now. And this is this topic that he's talking about. And you're absolutely right. It's hard to talk about divorce. Yeah, Johnny.
I would think no matter which answer he gives, they would have something that's already written down in the Bible to directly contradict.
See, this is what makes it a trap. A trap question is one where if you say yes, you get in trouble. And if you say no, you get in trouble. That's a trap.
Arguments with my brother.
Yes. So if you say yes, you get in trouble. If you say no, you get in trouble. Jesus gets this. And like the craftiest of crafty people, he answers a question with a question. So rather than saying yes, rather than saying no, he asks them a question. Genius move. All right, verse 3. Read it to us.
Jesus answered them with a question. What did Moses say in the law about divorce?
Oh, he puts it back to him. This is so good because this is essentially the same exact question they asked him, but he iced it. You know when you put icing on the cake, it makes the cake prettier? Before you put icing on the cake, it looks like bread. And there's not even like crust on it. It's like crustless bread. So you ice the cake. What does he do about this to make it iced? He throws Moses in there. The Pharisees loved Moses. He was like their favorite guy to talk about, to learn about, to read about. Moses wrote the first 5 books of the Bible. And to them, these books were more important than all the other ones. Those first 5 were the kings. They were the best. And so they really knew what Moses wrote. So by throwing Moses into the question, not just saying like, what does it say in the scripture? Generic. He says, what does Moses say? They can't help but answer. They want to answer so bad. They're like little puppy dogs. Yeah. Can I? I want to do it. I want to call me. And so they answer. Verse 4.
Well, he permitted it. They replied, he said, a man can give his wife a written notice of divorce and send her away.
Boom. So Moses goes through the first 5 books. He gets to the last one, Deuteronomy. Do means 2 in their language. Deuteronomy is like to teach, a teaching. So it's like the second time it's being taught. And so he puts like a consolidated everything we've learned from the first 4 books into the one last book, the review book. So he puts them all in there. And Moses, in that book, he says, when you divorce your wife, you should write out.
I divorced you.
You should write out a little certificate.
What? Congratulations.
I know, right? Like, what? Keep it with you at all times. Oh, it's the saddest thing I've ever held. Like, why would you want that? Well, sometimes we forget because we live in a very futuristic age. There were times in history where women had no rights. None. Not less rights, none. No rights. So imagine this, okay? Picture this. Ladies in the room, picture this as a lady. Guys, just picture it as a guy, okay? You're growing up. Your parents are talking to you as you're growing up, and they're letting you know at some point when you hit this age, we're going to kick you out. Get ready.
Oh gosh.
Get ready. You're like, okay, I'll get ready. Oh man, I gotta line up a job. Oh no, it's illegal for you to have a job. You can't have a job. Oh, okay. Okay. I gotta like get a job now, or like get money from my parents now, and I gotta buy a place. Oh no, you can't own a place. That's not allowed.
Go get married.
You can't own a place.
Refrigerator
You're not allowed to own
boxes.
it. Can I rent? No. Maybe on like the down low. Maybe like if you found someone who's willing to like not tell people about it, maybe you could rent.
Refrigerator boxes.
You can't own. You can't work. You can't. What do you do?
Live in a ditch.
You have to get married and find someone who was willing to take care of you.
You don't marry.
That's crazy talk, right? That's like nuts. Can you imagine any person growing up in a culture where they knew like one day I will be completely reliant on someone else and there's nothing I can really do about it?
Then the economy would fall down so quick.
But it was their economy for hundreds of years.
What the hell?
Women were in this situation and men were not. That was the situation. As a woman, you couldn't own property. It wasn't yours. Let's say you got married and your husband was super rich and you lived an awesome life and then one day he dies. Everything that you own, because you never did, it goes to your closest male relative. And it gets held there temporarily until you marry again. And then he can give it to your new husband. That's the situation. That's the situation. Now imagine this though. Picture this for me. If your husband divorces you and you have to let all your, stuff just be his because he didn't die.
So you're
He didn't die. It's not held in limbo. It's not like your dad gets it and he'll take care of you until you get married again. Your husband just keeps it. His.
So you're kind of screwed.
Oh, very much so. Now on top of that, if he doesn't give you a certificate of divorce,
You can still.
now there's a problem. You try and go get married again. People know you were married. How do you prove you're no longer married? Now you just look like you're trying to run out on your husband. Now, I mean, like, you might live in the same town still. Maybe you could just go get your ex-husband and pull him over there. But what if you moved? What if the person you want to marry is in another city or another country? If it gets out that you were married, you have no way to say the marriage is over. Now it looks like you're cheating on your... This is very complicated, and it all falls on the woman. The husband didn't have to deal with any of that. That is messed up. So Moses says, when you divorce her, write out a certificate. Because otherwise, you're not just ending your marriage, you're ending her life. She doesn't get to have one anymore.
That's cool.
She's alive, but there's not really anything there for her. That's pretty bad. So look at what Jesus says. This is how he explains it. 5 to you.
But Jesus responded, "If you wrote this commandment only as a concession to your hard hearts.
And then verse 6 up front.
But God made them male and female from the beginning of creation."
7?
This explains why a man leaves his father and mother and is joined to his wife.
Just logically.
Sorry.
8.
Couldn't tell you. And the two are united into one, since they are no longer two but one.
Let no one split apart what God's joined together.
Later then he was alone with his disciples in the house. They brought up the subject.
He told them, "Whoever divorces his wife and marries someone else commits adultery against her. And if she divorces her husband and marries another, she commits adultery."
All right, so 2 things just happened there. First, the public statement. Second, the private statement. The public one was Moses only wrote that because you're stubborn and he knew you were going to divorce no matter what. So if divorce was wrong in the first place, if divorce wasn't the best thing in the first place, and he wrote that, Moses wrote, don't get divorced, they would still get divorced. Then you have all these women who are trapped in like a moneyless existence, a livelihoodless existence, just like what, left out to beg? Like that's all they get? And the guys are fine? Likewise, if you say divorce is good and you write that down, then people are going to get divorced even more. So what did Moses write? When you get divorced, make sure you don't end her life. Give her a certificate so she can go get married again. Because you left her out in the cold. So Jesus just says, he didn't say do it. He didn't say don't do it. He says when you do it. He did this because you're stubborn and he knew you were gonna. Don't skip out on giving her an out. Make sure she has a way to continue on. Does this make sense? Okay, now remember, this is firmly attached culturally to the way divorce worked in their culture, to the rights that a woman had in their culture. You could not directly apply this to today. We have a whole different system of how money works, how ownership works. Women's rights are right there equal with man's rights. So there's no way you could say, we're going to divorce you, get nothing. What? Can you imagine back then the divorce occurs and kids are in the picture? Do you think that woman had any right to say those are my kids or his kids or our kids? She had no rights to say anything. How broken is that? And so Jesus never says it's good. In fact, he goes so far as in private to say, if you divorce so you can marry someone else, you're cheating on your spouse. Now that phrase only works, you can only say that and have it be true if, and this is a humongous if, you're saying the divorce because you felt like it never counted in the first place, because you can't cheat on someone you're not married to. I mean, logically, if a divorce meant you're not married to them, then there's no then you couldn't cheat. You're not married to them. So by Jesus saying that you're cheating on someone, that means you're still married to him. This is confirmed by the language Jesus actually uses. In this part right here, he doesn't use the word divorce. I know it might say that in your English translation, but what he says is put away. Put away. He doesn't say if you divorce someone and then go get married, you're cheating. He says if you put them away and then go get married, you're cheating. So he is choosing to refuse to accept that divorce as being a divorce. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now, this all starts to make sense when you look at the duality of marriage. Marriage has like these two sides to it. There's the way God sees it. There's the marriage in front of God's eyes. And Jesus describes that pretty simply here. He just says two people are now one person. They are one person. That's in God's eyes. But then legally, we sign a little piece of paper that says everything I have is hers and everything she has is mine. We share all. We sign a piece of paper. So if you sign another piece of paper, the divorce papers that say no longer are we sharing all our stuff, that's pretty straightforward. But the paper isn't what made you married in God's eyes. Does that make sense? So signing another piece of paper doesn't make God go, oh, whoa, you're two people again. Whoa, that was crazy. You can't sign a piece of paper to change God's mind. It doesn't work like that. This is really interesting because when you get married, back then, there wasn't a piece of paper at all. There was no paper. I mean, they had paper. Paper had been invented. But they didn't use paper to define your marriage. You were married because you made a vow. Does that make sense? You vowed to be there for that person, to be there with that person, to take care of that person. And the vow included the end of the marriage. The original marriage vows, and to this day, most people's vows, still have the end of the marriage put right in the vow. Do you know when marriage ends? When you die. That's it. Marriage is not eternal. Marriage isn't everlasting and infinite. Marriage doesn't keep on going once you get into heaven. Marriage ends the moment one of you dies. The moment one of you dies. And at that point, if you want to get married again, that's fine. You're not married. Once the other person dies, you're not married. So you can get married now. That's fine. That's okay. It's acceptable. There's nothing wrong with that. But to say the person I vowed to always be with and to protect and to be there for, I changed my mind. I don't want to do it. That doesn't undo the vow. Does that make sense? You vow something, you don't get to just, I don't feel like it. That doesn't work like that. Now, there's a lot of nuance to this, obviously. Marriage is complex. Marriage has been around since the beginning. The first two people were married. So to say all this and keep it simple is easy for Jesus because the conversation ended and he got to walk away. But for the rest of us, this is part of our life in some way. We have parents who are married, or we have parents who aren't. We have parents who are married for their first time ever and they're still married that time, or we have parents who are on their second or third or whichever marriage. We all have a piece of what Jesus is talking about as part of our actual lives we have to deal with. And for Jesus to just say marriage good, divorce bad, that doesn't change what we're living with. I think you guys all get that. If you don't have parents who've gone through divorce, you have a friend whose parents have gone through divorce. Am I right? Is there anyone in here who, A, your parents aren't divorced, and 0 of your friends' parents are divorced? Anybody in that boat? Your parents are not divorced, and none of your friends are divorced?
No.
Parents?
You
friends,
said parents were divorced and 0 of your friends.
Okay, sorry. Let's make this simpler. No divorce at all, parents or any of your friends' parents. Anybody? Wow, 1, 2? Or you have your hand up for something else?
None of my friends.
Wow, 2 people in the whole room. I'm actually kind of
I would like you to meet my friend.
Wowzers. That's legitimately surprising.
Wait.
Do you guys realize the difference though in that fraction? Out of a whole room, 2 people got to raise their hand, as in divorce has not touched me. 2 people. That's a pretty big deal. Did you have something else?
Yeah.
Go for it.
I was gonna say, do they have like no rights for women in England? Like back when?
Back when? That's a very big question. When?
Back when we can get married. Like first.
I would have to double check when things started. But suffrage, I think, started after America got started in
Yeah.
both countries. So even though suffrage, I think, started in England before America, I don't. Sorry, let me make sure I say that properly. Even though I think suffrage started in England before it started in America, I don't think suffrage started in England before America existed.
Well, I have
But
like,
America always
I
But
have-
I'm not positive on that.
I have another question that was like, if that happened, and
You keep using these words like that, and I have no clue what you're asking.
if women had no rights in England,
Okay,
and there was a king and a queen, and
sure.
the king died, what
Ooh.
would happen to them?
Good question. Okay, so when we say no rights, you could define that down into the nitty gritty, and I'm sure there'd be a huge difference between early England and what we're talking about Bible times. So when I say no rights and they say no rights, I don't think they're the same thing. I don't think so. I think they still had some rights as compared to the women of this age.
So the queen would still be equal.
Oh yeah, no, they had queens before women had rights, as far as I know. So no, I think no rights is a flamboyant term. You would really have to dig into the history books and figure out. I think they had some, but it was not even close. Does that make sense? Like they didn't have the same rights, not even by a long shot. But they probably had more rights than this. So, anyways, all right. So here's the deal on divorce, though. God says marriage is two people joining together, and He recognizes that. That's how Jesus defines it right here. So if that's the case, then to claim I'm not with that person anymore doesn't change that in God's eyes. So this is where it gets really complicated. If you read elsewhere in the New Testament where they talk about divorce, what they say is much, much simpler than we make divorce now in 2019. Basically, if you have cause to split up as a married couple, you have a reason to split up. The New Testament says, go ahead, live in a different building, move apart, but with the goal, with the aim of you fixing yourself and them fixing themselves so that you can come back together. You don't split up so that you can start to figure out how to live apart from them and learn how to live as two separate people who are no longer married. You split up for the purpose of fixing what is broken. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
There's this word marriage that we sometimes forget all the old ways it used to get used. Marriage is not a word that was specific to humans who decide to live together forever. Marriage is a word that means two things that are unlike being joined together to become one thing. And it's not a relationship word. You can use it in woodworking. I don't know if you guys have ever done wood shop. No.
I did.
You take like a board and you stick a board next to it and you put a nail through them. They're not married, right? Those boards, you could just pull that nail right back out, right? That's just a nail holding two boards together. You could use a screw and it's going to hold a little better than the nail, but you just turn the screw the other direction and ta-da, you got two boards again. Marriage is when you take both boards and you sit there and you finally saw little dovetails and grooves that perfectly match each other, and you stick wood glue in there inside the joint, and you stick that joint together, you let the glue dry under pressure with a clamp on it, and then when you're done, the glue joint is stronger than the surrounding wood. So if you took that two boards become one and you try and punch through it, it'll break, but it won't break where you glued it. It'll break a little to the side of that. The part where you join them together is now stronger than the surrounding wood. And so those two boards, now you can call them married. They behave as one board. You could put a screw right through the glue joint. It'll be fine. You could saw it in some odd direction. It'll behave as if it was always one board. Does that make sense? The join is now permanently bonding the two things into one thing. That's what marriage means. It's not a relationship word. And so when we apply it to a relationship, what we're doing is we're saying it's the kind of relationship you don't end at all. That's really kind of cool. Yeah.
Could you just melt the glue?
Could you what?
Melt the glue.
That's not how glue works.
Yeah.
Well, certain glue. Hot glue works like that, but you wouldn't use that on woodshop projects. it'd be very sad. Yeah.
Can you saw through the glue?
Yes, you could, but you would have a little bit of each board on each board.
What if you didn't?
Follow me on this. When you join the two boards together, you actually have to carve fingers into each board so they do a interlocking
Jigsaw
thing like this, like a jigsaw. And if you do saw back through them, which is totally doable and people do it all the time, you would get a little bit of these fingers stuck on this board and a little bit of these fingers stuck on that board. You wouldn't get them back apart again the way they were glued together. And this happens. When we take our relationships lightly, when we take a marriage and break it in half, heck yeah, you can do it. It's been done thousands and thousands of times, but it's not a clean break. You're not getting out of there unhurt. You're not getting out of there the way you went in. You are giving up a piece of your soul when you start chopping it away at two souls that have been put together. That's serious stuff. Yeah.
We can burn it.
Just burn both people.
How exactly are you thinking about that picture?
It's just all gone.
Just total ashes? Yeah, no, that happens.
And then burn the ashes.
Yeah, Alex.
Does that mean Peanut and Jelly are married? Once they mix together, they can't get them apart. They're done.
Yeah, I mean, it ain't oil and water. They do
Or like
mix a
melted
little.
Jolly Rancher and carbonate.
I mean, like most jellies and most peanut butters, they don't mix properly. But you're right. You peel them back apart. They'll leave a little of each other.
Like 2 different kinds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so
I can't have peanut butter.
Jesus is not looking at divorce differently and saying divorce bad. Jesus is looking at marriage differently. He's saying marriage, the way God sees it, doesn't have divorce at the end. That's crazy. Now, there is some, I don't want to call it a loophole because that almost makes it sound like something you're hoping for. There is some exceptions to all this. You see, a marriage vow can be broken more than one way. Not just by signing a document that says we're done. A marriage vow can be broken by simply someone not keeping the vow. No, cheating. Cheating. You see, a marriage vow encompasses many different things, but one of the biggest is you're faithful to that other person. That you don't go join yourself to someone else while you're joined to them. And so there is cause to say, you know what, the other person has already broken this vow. They've cheated on me, or they've abused me. And then to look at that marriage and say, I'm going to not fix it, is an option. That's not to say it can't be fixed, but sometimes the damage is so intense that fixing it seems like too much. And I understand that. That's not something you can ask everyone to do, to go back and fix a person who might not even want to be fixed. And that happens. It's incredibly sad because it's still going to damage both people. It's still going to hurt everyone involved. And so even though that might be the best course you can take, it's still going to hurt people. And this is why God's against divorce. It's not because he's mean and he doesn't like people having their way. It's because he looks at divorce and goes, that's not the best option. That's a terrible option. It's going to hurt everyone touching it. Yeah.
Could you just cross your fingers during the vow? Just be like,
No.
I don't think that's how vows work.
I can't even cross my fingers.
Words have set meanings we've all agreed upon that we all understand. Like, this does not undo what those words mean. These are my fingers. They are touching each other. Has nothing to do with what I said. I know you can't negate what I said just because I was crossing my fingers when I said it. Yes?
So if someone does cheat and they don't get in a divorce, do they have to revow?
Ooh, good question. I don't think they have to, but they could, and they might even should, because to regain someone's trust is a difficult process, and it's not something you can shortcut, but making a fresh vow can help. It won't always. I mean, if they're the kind of person who's made lots of promises in the past, making one more is probably not going to help their relationship very much. The thing that'll help them most is to just keep the vows they've made, to keep the promises they've already made. That'll make the biggest difference, not stacking more expectations on top of what they've already failed to, meet. It's not going to help. All right, there's one more thing I want to touch on today. After Jesus goes through all this stuff about the adults in a family, there's actually something here about kids, too. Who was the last person who read? Who read verse 12? You did. Okay, so you've got 13.
okay. One day some parents brought their children to Jesus so he could teach and bless them.
Touch.
To touch, I said that. But but the disciples scolded the parents for bothering them. Yeah, I'm tired. I can't.
That's okay. We love you and accept you just the tired way you are. All right, Sonia, verse 14.
But when Jesus saw it, he was greatly displeased and said to them, "Let the little children come to me, and do not forbid them, for of such is the kingdom of God."
I tell you the truth, anyone who doesn't receive the kingdom of God like a child will never enter it.
Then he took the children in his arms and placed his hands on their heads and blessed them.
Nice. Okay, so we've seen lots of people bring lots of people to Jesus in the past chapters we've read, but usually it was because they were sick or dying or had a demon possessing them. Like they came to Jesus and they had a request, please change this thing about them. His legs don't work, or his eyes don't work, or this demon keeps throwing him in a fire. Can you put a stop to that? That was a real example. So these parents don't do that though. These parents just march their kids towards Jesus and they're like, go get a blessing. Go on, go on. It's like going and sitting on Santa's lap. Like nothing actually takes place. You just feel better when you leave. But a blessing from Jesus wouldn't be like that. A blessing from Jesus would be a real thing. The difference is those kids aren't right at the edge of death if they don't go get a blessing. Those kids aren't about to fall over if they don't get a blessing from Jesus. So the disciples look at this whole situation and they say, no, this is not necessary. Jesus has better things to do than to just slightly improve the lives of these children. Get them out of here. And Jesus sees it happening. He's like, no, I don't. I have nothing better to do than to improve the lives of these children. Bring them, please. That's exactly what I have time to do. That is the best thing I could possibly do. And so he says, just bring the kids. Let them. But he adds something. He says, of such as these, people like these kids are what my kingdom is made out of. He says, if you don't believe like these kids believe, you ain't even going to be in my kingdom. Now, when I hear that, I want to know what the heck he means. Because if there's a restriction policy, like you can't be part of Jesus' kingdom, and it's down to being like some kids that were alive 2,000 years ago, I will never meet or even know their names, I want to know what he means. Because if I don't know what he means, I might be in this weird little middle group that he seems to be alluding to of you think you're in God's kingdom, but you're not. I don't want to be in that middle group. That's a bad place to be. So look at the way a kid believes. You take a little kid, they're impressionable. You teach them something, you show them something, that will affect the way they live out their life. When you teach them something, when you show them something, don't you remember, like that little kid immediately starts doing what you've shown them, immediately starts repeating what you told them, immediately starts acting the way you showed them how to act? That's how kids are. You teach them something and then they do it. That's not how adults are. And right now you guys are right in the middle of the two, and I can see 50% of the time you're one way and 50% of the time you're the other way. 50% of the time you learn something and immediately start copying it. Like every single meme that your friends laugh at, you will immediately start repeating. This is built in. Built in. However, someone else teaches you something, you have this other reaction you can have. This is the adult reaction. That's nice. That's the adult reaction. You teach an adult something, they're like, okay, wow, that's very interesting. That is intriguing to think about. And then they're done. That's it. The thought has happened in their head. Move on. I don't care anymore. And this is the problem. Jesus says, if you find yourself taking the things that God teaches you, taking the things that Jesus teaches you, and you're like, wow, that's really cool. He says, you're not in my kingdom. You're a fake. You're a fake. That's not real faith. Faith has to have an action that comes with it. Faith has to have the result. If you learn something from the Bible, you're like, that's really cool, and then you don't use it, then that's not very cool. You just faked it. I mean, this is real life. This is the God who made you. You're treating it like a math class? Really? No, that's not going to cut it. Jesus says, you're not in my kingdom then. You got to treat it like a little kid would treat it. You see, when a little kid is told all about Santa Claus, they don't go, that's nice. That's what a little kid does when you bring them up on Christmas movies and presents under a tree. When you teach them about Santa Claus, what does a kid do?
Start writing letters.
Start writing letters to Santa Claus. Santa Claus, please, I'm begging you. I want this train. I gotta have it.
Give me.
I need more
Result. A big result. Likewise, if you guys believe that you will get a real laugh out of your friends, if you honestly believe that doing something, saying something, acting a certain way will get an honest to goodness piece of enjoyment out of your friends, you will do it. You will learn to backflip. You will learn to do the stupid worm dance or whatever other dance that they know how to do. You will learn it because you want that result. Do you understand that? Like, you want that result. You crave that result. So you do it. That's what Jesus is talking about. He says, if you listen to what I'm teaching you and you want what I'm telling you about and you put that into action, boom, 100% in my kingdom. 100%. If you hear what I'm telling you, you're like, that's very nice. Not in. That's fake. That's not real faith. That's pretend. That's write the right answer so you don't get called in the principal's office. That's a math class. That's not real life. Yeah.
But what if you wanted something really badly that was bad for you?
Oh yeah, no, you can do that too. That's still called faith. That's just faith in bad things. It's just bad action. Jesus isn't talking about generically have faith in all things. He was talking about like a kid believes in all things. I want you to have that for what I'm teaching you.
How kids don't believe.
So he was applying the generic concept of how kids learn and how kids believe to the specific what you should believe. Does that make sense? Yeah. No, you can put your faith in all kinds of junk. That's the examples I was giving you earlier about the worm and the other silly dances and things. Plenty of faith there, but it won't do anything. All right, so put these two things into action, and you kind of get a map of the family. Marriage, two people acting as one. Kids, they believe whatever you teach them. Parents, teach your kids well. Likewise, you guys have to watch yourself and guard yourself. Because as you start to learn the response of, that's nice, there's a time and a place for that. There's a reason why adults do it so often. It's because there's so much junk in this world. And if you believed and took in and responded properly to every single thing that wanted your attention, you would be a mess. You need to be able to say, that's nice. But you need to know when to say it. So likewise, all of those things that grab your attention now that you are willing to invest in, you are willing to put your time into, you are willing to learn the stupid dances, all of those things, you have to look at them carefully and go, but should I? Is it worth it? Is this what I should spend my time on? 20 years from now, am I going to care which number of dances I have memorized? Am I going to care exactly who I made laugh 20 years ago?
Yes.
You have your little notebook out. Laugh 76 from person Y. I'm working on laugh 77. It's going to be good.
You're only on last.
No! You will not be like that. However, there will come a day when this life is done. There will come that day. And when you get to heaven and you have a perfected body, you're gonna be able to remember a lot of things. I would like to remember how much time I poured into Jesus rather than how much time I poured into going up a level in my character. I would like to remember how much time I poured into my family rather than how much time I poured into making these other people happy who at that one point in time I thought they needed to be made happy. Wow. I want to be able to look back and go, Jesus, like 85% of the time I was getting it right? Because there's no way I'm getting to 100, but I don't want to look back and think, wow, I only made 15 good choices in my whole life. Like, I don't want that. And so I need to have that childlike faith. I need to have that faith where I just read my Bible and go, that's actually important. That demands a change in me. That demands that I don't do what I was about to do. And that I say different things to those people. And that I behave differently around these people. And you can just keep going and going and going because there's so much good stuff in there. God has a lot to teach you guys, but if you don't learn it like a kid learns it and allow it to change, the way you act, the way you talk, the way you behave, the way you live, it doesn't really count for anything. You just become a Bible memorizer. And that might be impressive, but it's not going to help you. So allow it to change you. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you for your word. Thank you so much for what you're teaching us. We just pray, Lord, that as we hear about your opinions on marriage, not just divorce, Lord, but marriage too, that we would allow those opinions to affect ours. That one day as we who in this room are not married yet, that as we move towards marriage, we would start to think about what you think about marriage. That we would place your opinion above our own, that the way we decide to treat our wife or husband, that would be based on how you said we're supposed to treat our wife or husband. Help us, Lord, to base our opinions on yours. And Lord, just like a kid, let us be impressioned by you. That we would take the things you're teaching us and not let them go in one ear and out the other. Help us, Lord, to make them part of who we are. To make your truth the biggest deal in our life. To make it be the one belief that actually changes what we do and what we say, how we act. With our eyes closed and our heads bowed, if there's anyone in this room who's never before said, Jesus, I need your forgiveness. Jesus, I want to be part of your family. I want to be part of your kingdom. Jesus, I believe in you. You can do it right now. The Bible says that eternal life in heaven can be yours. Jesus already paid for it. All you have to do is humbly ask. Just say, forgive me. Take me into your kingdom. Take me into your family. Just let him know that you believe in him and ask for that forgiveness. If you want to do that right now, God can see your heart. He knows exactly what you're feeling and what you're thinking. He knows where you're at. I don't, though. And so if you want to do that right now, you want to ask for those things, just put your hand up. Just to show me you want to do that right now. And I'll pray with you. I'll help you with the words, but you can actually talk to him. You can ask him for those things. I'll just help you along in that. So if you want to do that right now, just put up your hand. Just to say me, I want his forgiveness. I want his eternal life. Anyone this morning? Oh Lord, I thank you for these junior hires. Bless them as they go. Help them to keep that childlike faith, but to guard it from all the crazy things in this world they could use it on. We ask that in your name. Amen. I love you guys. Put your Bibles back on the shelf.
Don't you have to shake it up first?
No.
I know, I can go off first.
Okay, we'll blind shake. We'll blind shake. Okay, here we go. See.
If I win though.
No, you know, shake it again.
Oh, come on. Come on.
There's a tight race right here.
I don't know.
Okay, winner.
Yes. Why is
Alex
the
wins.
Bible
Oh,
all-
yeah.
Good job, Alex.
Riding the other phone like a sled. It's a victory. I love you guys. It is 12:20. Hang out for 5 minutes and head downstairs.
So you got me.
Just got them.
Someone's phone is over here.
Okay.
I got new shades. I lost my other pet. They magically disappeared. I left them here for one day. My mom's office. Next day, they were gone.
Can you hand me the password?
Always
Oh, I guess someone has been eating stuff.
still got it.
No. That happened in the car.
So nice. Thank you. So nice. Hey, man, I should have tapped it. You always have it in your hand. I know, right? Okay.
I dropped it too early and she goes,
Yeah, you moved it. Here,
I gave up
you're cheating. Yeah, put it in your hand.
come on, I'm ready.
Why, Risha? The way you hit it doesn't like me at all. Good boy. Oh, look how stop being depressive. Right? Every time you get sick. Oh. I don't care.
Drained so hard. I drained it so hard.
Wow.
I'm pretty much the only person who's really able to
Okay,
tap.
so I'll take the tap. It's easier than this tap God.
Like, as long as like the person touches the other side, tap it, they'll just be like,
I'm done.
That was so awesome.
Wait, did you see it? It showed it. Like, I'm not hungry. How do you do that? Oh, yeah. Oh!
They're almost on the table. Mr. Dead. No!
Yes.
Wow! It was loud.
better.
Oh, it's light bulb is off. I know, it's so fair. Because you can legit tap it on someone, you know, like that. Then they can't do anything.
Yeah,
Just
but
tap it.
like let's just say
Technically, it would be
that if it were to be like this fast, that someone over there, they can't get it.
Take that out of it. That's what I do.
The only reason I don't count the bat
Okay, alright, play again. I think I'm trying to play
I was
one more.
second anyway.
One, two.
Why?
Oh,
So excited.
I thought he was gonna tap it on it.
One not. Wait, that was something. Oh, yeah, it is. It is messed up.
I'll miss
I'll
it.
Yes. Say full. Yeah, I know, right?
Oh my goodness.
Hit it, please. Yes. Go, go.
Yes!
Take it. Don't take it, me. Unless you drink it. Drink it. Get that off the table.
Double letters!
Oh, yeah. So bad. I'm gonna hit so many times.
I know, right? It's so bad. I don't like that.
He throws it so hard.
Fires was going up.
Whoa, bro.
He goes like that. No.
It's in the glasses.
No, that's fake news.
I need to head down like
Okay. Okay.
rock ball.
Oh, you grabbed.
Oh, I did? How did I do that? I don't know how. Congratulations. Well, I'm not gonna miss this one. I'm not gonna miss. Oh, I didn't miss. Yeah. I gotta finish it.
4, 5.
I didn't need up. No. Yes. No. I gotta head down.
I'll go with you.
Okay, you're out.
Yeah, I'll go with you.
I gotta go.
All right, boys and Sonia. 12:30. Boys and Sonia. Look at the only girl left. They all ran away. They all ran away. We're gonna be out of here. 12:30. Wow.
Okay, bye.
Good to see you. Have a good Sunday. We'll see you soon. Someone left their phone on the floor. Don't forget it, whoever you are. Oh yeah, that's mine. Is it yours, Sonia?
No, that's man.
Oh, don't forget it, sir.
That's me.
You need that. For life. Right? Everyone needs their phone for life.
Pretty much.
Pretty much. How else would I? Why you still swift on me? How else would I watch Flex Seal commercials? I didn't have my phone.
I have no idea. I don't even know what that is. So.
You've never heard of Flex Seal commercials?
Flex sale?
Flex Seal. Flex Seal.
No.
Oh, you've never seen a Phil Swift Flex Seal commercial? No, eat. I'm gonna get my baby.
They're amazing.
Get out of here, guys.
Oh,
Okay. Whoa. That win.
that wasn't. Now it,
I think Mark might get you out, but then well, I don't actually know. Actually, again, you know really high. Oh. Come on, Mark. He's been at like 170.
I know.
This whole time. Now you're really high. You're definitely out.
Yep.
And
Nope. Not quite. Not quite.
And Mark's pretty not like Canada. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. She would get you lost.
Oh, I thought I fell. Oh, that's the end.
Yep. She's dead, boss. Dead.